Hey guys, tonight we are slipping into the dim glow of a world before electricity, before cozy duvets, before even the concept of bedtime existed. You're crouched by a fire that crackles low, its light flickering across rough cave walls, painted with ochre and charcoal. The air smells of smoke, earth, and damp stone. Your stomach is still heavy from roasted roots, and maybe the chewy strip of meat that you gnawed earlier. You're tired, but here's the thing. No one quite knows why. You probably won't survive this Ice Age winter anyway, but somehow your body insists on shutting down for hours at a time. What a nuisance, really. Still, without sleep, your tribe won't hunt, won't paint, won't carry the fire to tomorrow. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're watching from, what country, and what local time. Because I like to imagine us as a scattered tribe around the same glowing hearth. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first yawns of humanity arrive when you tilt your head back, eyes heavy, watching sparks rise like lazy stars. Sleep, in this raw prehistoric moment, is both mystery and danger. You settle against cool rock, hearing the shuffle of feet outside, knowing predators love a dozing human. Some scholars suggest our ancestors slept lightly, in short bursts, to keep watch. Others argue the darkness itself pressed down on them like a weighted blanket, nudging them into longer stretches of oblivion. Historians still argue whether prehistoric humans were monophasic, like us, or drifted in 2, 3, even 4 scattered naps. You curl closer to the fire. Its warmth is uneven, one side of your skin flushed, while the other side tingles with chill. Beside you, someone mutters in their sleep, limbs twitching, perhaps chasing deer across dreamland. That's one mainstream fact. REM fragments of sleep, the dream stage, are ancient. They weren't invented with Freud. They've been firing through brains since before language. And quirky? Well, in some groups, chewed herbs were stuffed under sleeping skins to ward off nightmares. Imagine tucking a sprig of bitter root under your mammoth hide blanket instead of a teddy bear. Cozy. The cave ceiling drips faintly. Water echoes like a patient metronome. You count the drops until your mind fuzzes. Your body is heavy, but your brain keeps asking silly questions. Why sleep when food is scarce? Why close eyes when saber-toothed shadows lurk? Yet you obey, because sleep, inconvenient as it seems, is stitched into your survival. Even then, you probably yawned just as you are now. And speaking of yawns, take this moment around our first 10 minutes together to settle deeper. If you're still awake, somehow, maybe gently tap the like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next long wander through forgotten corners of history. Only if you feel like it, of course. No stone tools required. You step forward into the shifting sands of the Nile Valley, and the air feels thick with heat, dust, and a hum of cicadas that refuse to sleep. The sky is dark, but the desert never really falls silent. You're barefoot on worn stone, and papyrus scrolls are tucked under the arms of scribes who murmur about dreams as if they were telegrams sent straight from the gods. The ancient Egyptians, clever and also very theatrical about their spiritual lives, built entire manuals, cataloging dreams, much like you might thumb through a dream interpretation book at a modern bookstore. Except theirs were written on fragile sheets, rolled carefully, and stored as if they contained the secrets of eternity. You recline on a woven mat that scratches your skin, trying to relax, though mosquitoes and the occasional lizard scuttle across the floor to remind you of your mortality. You can almost hear priests whispering in hieroglyphic whispers, calling dreams messages from the divine. It's soothing, isn't it? Almost. Except imagine you just dreamt of eating onions. According to one surviving text, that might mean prosperity. Or it might mean you'll argue with your mother-in-law. Historians still argue whether these interpretations were serious guidelines or simply entertaining riddles scribes used to keep bored villagers occupied during the long nights when the Nile swelled and the fields drowned. The mainstream historical fact here is simple. The Egyptians believed deeply in the sacred nature of dreams. They recorded them in what we now call the Dream Book, one of the earliest known efforts to codify the strange theater of the unconscious. And people really did consult priests to understand whether their visions of crocodiles, floods, or naked neighbors carried cosmic significance. One quirky tidbit: they sometimes slept in temples dedicated to specific gods, hoping to dream of divine cures for their illnesses. Picture yourself stretched out on a cold stone floor, craning your neck on a reed pillow, and telling yourself, "Ah yes, tonight, Thoth will fix my sore knee." The firelight of Section 1 is gone now. In its place, flickering oil lamps cast jittery shadows on murals of Horus, Ra, and Osiris. The temple smells of resin, heavy with frankincense, and your eyelids feel sticky from smoke. You roll to one side, searching for comfort, though the bedding feels like a punishment devised by someone who never experienced lower back pain. And just as you drift, you wonder, did the pharaohs dream the same way you do? Were their night wanderings filled with flying, falling, and embarrassingly nonsensical scenes? Or were their minds too weighed down by divine responsibilities to allow silliness into their slumber? Modern neuroscientists would tell you, dreams are just brain housekeeping, random neurons firing, like the janitor of your mind, sweeping up old grocery lists. But here in Egypt, 3,000 years before any MRI machine, your dream is destiny. If you dream of rivers rising high, it's not indigestion from that onion stew. No, it's a prophecy, a warning, a guide to planting your barley, or maybe not planting it, depending on how convincing your priest sounds in the morning. You wander through this temple of sleep with sandals dragging, noting that it doubles as a hospital. Sleep here isn't just rest, it's prescription. You see a man snoring loudly on a mat in the corner, while a priest sits nearby with an expression that says, "Yes, I'll charge you extra for this diagnosis." Egyptians practiced a kind of dream incubation, deliberately arranging the environment, chants, incense, charms, to provoke the right kind of visions. Imagine if you, desperate for 8 hours, lit an entire Yankee Candle store in your bedroom just to dream of passing a math test. The quirky rituals don't stop there. Sometimes a sacrifice was made before sleep, or a prayer written down and tucked under the sleeper's head. You almost laugh at the thought of your modern self scribbling, "Dear subconscious, please let me dream of pizza tonight," before tucking it under your pillow. Gentle sarcasm aside, there's something deeply human about wanting your unconscious to cooperate, to tell you something useful instead of that recurring nightmare where your teeth crumble like chalk. Outside, the desert night stretches long. Dogs bark in the distance, and the Nile hisses softly as water pushes through reeds. You breathe in the dusty air, shifting your weight on that scratchy mat, and wonder what it means that you can't fall asleep. Does it mean the gods are displeased? Or maybe the gods are just busy bothering someone else with visions of lotus flowers and ibis birds. Historians still argue whether ordinary Egyptians truly believed every dream was sacred, or whether they rolled their eyes after a bad night and blamed it on bad bread. You let the thought fade, The oil lamp guttering nearby spits a bead of soot. You yawn, long and slow, because your brain cannot help itself. Yawning is strangely contagious. You might even be yawning now, across centuries. Scientists still don't fully agree why. Is it about cooling the brain? A social bonding signal? Or simply an evolutionary leftover? Either way, you and your ancient Egyptian host both do it, stretching your jaws as wide as crocodile mouths. A temple guard pads past, staff clinking softly on stone, his shadow dancing across painted walls. You feel small, cocooned by mystery, heavy-lidded, but restless. Every time you shut your eyes, your mind paints images. The swirl of sandstorms, the hiss of cobras, the towering pyramids glowing beneath moonlight. You don't control it, not really. Your mind plays tricks, borrowing scraps of memory, weaving them into something absurd and oddly meaningful. Maybe you dream of carrying baskets of barley. Maybe you dream of soaring over the desert like a falcon, shrieking at your enemies. In either case, someone will interpret it tomorrow with utmost seriousness. And here's a soft aside for you. The Egyptians were also practical sleepers. The desert heat was unbearable. So many households slept outside, under nets to keep mosquitoes away. You might try that yourself if your air conditioning ever gives out. Not the mosquito part, though. Modern life is merciful there. Instead, think of the star canopy above you, a ceiling painted with constellations far clearer than the smoggy skies you might know now. Imagine drifting into sleep with Orion so sharp above that you could almost pluck his belt and wear it. You shift once more on your mat. Your body is heavy, your thoughts slower. If you're still awake, and honestly, no judgment if you're not, maybe take a breath here. The ancients didn't have like buttons, but you do. Consider pressing it now, subscribing so you don't miss when we wander further into the history of slumber. It's just one small ritual in this modern temple of sleep we're building together. The Nile murmurs, the oil lamp flickers, and your mind slides gently away from waking. The priests will whisper over your dreams tomorrow, but tonight, all you need is rest. You lie back now, belly still heavy with the remnants of that onion stew you tasted in Egypt. But the world has shifted. The river Nile fades, and in its place, you find yourself perched on a rough straw pallet somewhere in the crumbling shade of an Athenian courtyard. Cicadas sing, as they apparently always do in ancient stories, and the air is thick with the tang of olives, dust, and an occasional waft of goat. You blink, stretch, and notice philosophers nearby gesturing with animated hands, robes swishing, sandals scuffing. They are arguing, again, always arguing, this time about sleep itself. You, poor listener, just want to close your eyes. Yet here comes Aristotle, raising his voice with the kind of conviction that only someone with a beard that long can muster. He insists sleep is caused by vapors rising from your food as it digests, clogging the channels of the brain until you collapse like a sack of figs. You almost chuckle. Imagine telling your doctor today that you feel sleepy because your stomach fumes floated upward. Still, this was the mainstream understanding in his time, and people took it seriously. The stone beneath you is warm from the day's sun. It presses into your back, uncomfortable yet grounding, like lying on a sun-baked driveway after a long afternoon. You shift, half listening as Plato, never one to stay quiet, argues that dreams might be fragments of truth revealed when the rational mind rests. He warns against indulgence, claiming that people with unruly appetites will dream of chaos, while the virtuous see visions of wisdom. You want to roll your eyes, but you resist. After all, You are still in their world, their courtyard, their dust. Historians still argue whether the Greeks believed their dream interpretations with the same intensity as the Egyptians, or whether these theories were more intellectual amusements tossed around at symposia between gulps of wine. Yet what cannot be denied is how seriously they treated the balance between waking life and the quiet pull of sleep. Sleep was not just a biological need, it was a stage for philosophy, a rehearsal of the soul's mysteries. You pull your rough cloak tighter, aware that Greek bedding was not exactly luxurious. Ordinary citizens often slept on straw mats, perhaps topped with animal skins if fortune allowed. Wealthier households owned simple wooden frames stretched with rope, forming what we might generously call beds. If you have ever flopped down on a squeaky fold-out couch, you already know the sensation. Part stability, part sinking, and part regret. Yet compared to the ground, it was a marvel. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some Greeks swore by sleeping with an amulet under their pillow to ward off bad dreams. A polished stone, a scrap of inscribed lead, or even a dried fig leaf might be pressed beneath the headrest as a charm. It was both protective and a little ridiculous, like taping a motivational quote above your bed in hopes of avoiding nightmares. You wonder if the charm ever worked, or if the sleeper simply felt comforted enough to finally drift off. You glance upward, to a sky far clearer than most of us ever see. The stars gleam like hammered bronze, and the night wind carries hints of the sea. You imagine dozing off in this courtyard, the sounds of the city fading to a lull. Merchants shuttering their stalls, torches crackling along the agora, someone coughing in a neighboring house. Sleep, even then, was woven into the rhythm of civic life. The philosophers continue debating, their voices a strange kind of lullaby. You catch fragments. The soul leaves the body during dreams, wandering in other realms. Or perhaps the soul stays but reveals hidden truths. Some say dreams predict the future. Others scoff, claiming they are nonsense stirred by indigestion. You smile faintly, replace the names, and you could be overhearing a modern coffee shop debate about lucid dreaming versus sleep science. Nothing changes, except the sandals. Still, for all their arguing, the Greeks contributed one enduring fact. They recognized sleep as essential for health, both of body and mind. Physicians like Hippocrates prescribed rest as a remedy for fevers and injuries, insisting that disrupted sleep signaled imbalance. If you slept poorly, something was wrong with your humors. And while their humor theory of medicine is long outdated, the insight that poor sleep often accompanies illness still resonates today. A small dog pads across the courtyard and circles twice before curling up. You watch its sides rise and fall, breathing steady, twitching paws betraying dreams of chasing goats. That sight alone is enough to remind you that dreaming is not just human. Animals, too, wander strange landscapes behind closed eyes. Imagine Aristotle pausing mid-lecture to point at the dog, saying, "See, even he dreams." Of course, he would then return to claiming it was vapor-related. The conversation drifts toward gods, as it always does. Morpheus, the god of dreams, shaped visions to whisper messages from Olympus. Somnus, later adopted by the Romans, embodied sleep itself. The very act of surrendering to unconsciousness was tied to divine presence. You tug your cloak again, thinking how every culture, from caves to temples to courtyards, wrapped sleep in mystery. What seems ordinary to you, a nightly habit of flopping into bed, was to them a brush with gods and fate. The ground cools beneath you, and your muscles soften, but your ears stay open, catching one last scholarly remark. Dreams, a philosopher mutters. Maybe the rehearsal of death. That thought might feel unsettling, yet in this calm, it settles gently. To close your eyes, to drift away, to wake again. Practice for the greater unknown. You breathe out slowly, letting the notion dissolve like a star, fading at dawn. Your eyes grow heavier. The philosophers' voices grow softer, like waves lapping against stone. You almost laugh at the irony that their endless arguing, which once irritated students, now works as the perfect sleeping aid. Perhaps they never intended to bore anyone to slumber, but you find it soothing nonetheless. One last thing before you slip. If you are still with me, still awake somehow in this ancient courtyard, this might be the perfect moment to gently press the like button, maybe subscribe, so you can join me for the next long wander into history's forgotten corners. Think of it as your amulet under the pillow, small, symbolic, and strangely comforting. The night grows deeper. The philosophers blur, their robes swaying in your memory as you tip toward dreams. In your mind, marble pillars stretch tall, stars spin overhead, and the city of Athens quiets into silence. Your breath evens out, your body loosens, and the mystery of sleep welcomes you once again. You open your eyes again, but the scene has shifted. The marble courtyards of Athens dissolve, and now you are stumbling through the crowded, smoky streets of Rome. The air smells of tallow lamps, wood smoke, and that unmistakable tang of sewage drifting from gutters that never rest. You glance up at Insulae, the tall apartment blocks stacked like unstable towers, where families huddle together in cramped rooms. You imagine trying to sleep with neighbors above you, stomping, babies crying, and pots clattering. Yet this is Rome, and sleep finds its way even here, broken into fragments and patched together with ritual, habit, and resignation. The Romans practiced what we now call segmented sleep. They often fell asleep soon after dusk, then woke around midnight for a while before drifting back down again. In that waking interval, people prayed, gossiped, worked, or sometimes even visited neighbors. Imagine it. You roll over in the dark, hear a knock at your door, and instead of being terrified, you just shrug and make tea. Historians still argue whether this first sleep, second sleep was a conscious practice or simply the natural rhythm of a world lit only by fire. You try it yourself. You stretch out on a wooden bed frame strung with rope, covered by a thin mattress stuffed with straw. It squeaks, groans, and digs into your side. Wealthier Romans flaunt their comfort with cushions stuffed with feathers, linen sheets imported from Egypt, and heavy wool blankets. But you, an average sleeper, accept the scratch of straw and the occasional flea. The mainstream fact here is clear. Sleep in Rome was stratified just like everything else. Your social rank determined not only your daily bread ration, but also how soft your bed felt beneath your tired body. The street outside your insula never really quiets. A cart rattles past, iron-rimmed wheels clanging over cobblestones. Dogs bark. Somewhere, a drunken voice yells, followed by laughter. You pull your thin blanket higher and try to sink into slumber, but the candle guttering beside you flickers, smoke into your nostrils. Candles, of course, are luxuries. Most families stretch oil lamps, their dim glow staining walls with soot. And there lies the quirky tidbit. Wealthy Romans sometimes placed polished bronze mirrors behind their lamps to magnify the light, essentially inventing the world's first bedside lamp hack. Imagine propping up a shiny pan behind your lamp and feeling very smug about your innovative lighting solution. You turn over again, restless. In your first bout of sleep, you might dream of gladiators clashing in the arena, or of market stalls overflowing with figs and olives. Then you stir awake around midnight, as many Romans did. You sit up, scratch your head, and listen. Neighbors murmur through thin walls. Someone downstairs is grinding grain. Perhaps you whisper a prayer to Somnus, the Roman personification of sleep, begging him to return swiftly. Or maybe you tiptoe outside into the cool night, joining others who wander streets lit faintly by torches. This in-between time, this middle watch, is oddly peaceful. Romans wove sleep into their calendar with precision. The day began early, with business often concluded by noon to avoid the heat. After the midday meal, many indulged in a short nap, the meridiatio. It wasn't laziness, it was practical. Picture yourself sprawled on a bench in the shade of a colonnade, eyes half shut, dozing while voices echo through marble halls. Even senators, those masters of rhetoric and endless debate, supposedly allowed themselves this pause. The rhythm of Roman life wasn't one long, unbroken night's rest, but a patchwork of naps and intervals, stitched together across the day and night. Historians still argue whether this segmented pattern was universal or just common in certain social groups. Did every Roman embrace it, or was it mostly city dwellers adapting to noise and artificial light? Evidence is mixed, like most things in history, but the concept lingers. You imagine your modern self adopting the pattern, asleep at dusk, awake at midnight, to scroll endlessly on your phone, then back down again until dawn. Except here, no phone, only shadows, soft prayers, and the hum of a restless city. As the night deepens, you lie back again, shifting on the ropes of your bed frame. The mattress sags, and you feel your spine curve awkwardly. You whisper to yourself, half amused, "I guess posture wasn't invented yet." Around you, the air cools, carrying the faint scent of bread baking in nearby ovens. Bakers worked through the night so loaves would be ready at dawn. That means, while you struggle with segmented sleep, someone is kneading dough by lamplight, yawning into their flour. You are united in drowsiness, though separated by task. And here's another quirk. Romans were obsessed with the idea of proper sleep hygiene, though not in the way you think. They believed excessive sleep made a person weak, while too little made one irritable. Philosophers warned against indulgence, while satirists mocked those who lingered in bed past sunrise. The city itself practically punished oversleeping, since carts and crowds made late travel unbearable. You almost laugh, realizing that get-up-early lectures have been boring humanity since antiquity. You toss, you turn, and eventually, the second sleep washes over you. Dreams now carry a different tone. Perhaps you find yourself wandering marble baths, steam curling around statues of gods. Or maybe you dream of standing in the Senate, toga askew, fumbling your speech while every senator yawns. Either way, the night passes in layers. Wake, sleep, wake, sleep, until the pale light of dawn seeps between shutters. When you rise, stiff from the straw and sore from the ropes, you stretch and rub your eyes. You hear the city stirring, vendors setting up stalls, donkeys braying, children calling. Sleep was never perfect here, but it was enough to carry bodies into another day of trade, politics, and survival. And now, a gentle reminder, since you're still with me in this Roman room, if you haven't already, maybe tap the like button, subscribe if you want to join me again in the next dusty corridor of history. Think of it as your own little midnight ritual. Simple, harmless, and maybe a bit comforting. The sun glows on tile roofs, and your breath steadies. Rome exhales around you. You step from your insula into the sapo, the street, heavy-eyed yet ready to follow the flow of this ancient city. The memory of segmented sleep lingers, a rhythm that feels strange yet oddly natural, as if your own body almost remembers. You blink, yawn, and move forward, carried into the next stretch of time. You move forward now, past the rattle of Roman carts and the scent of their bakeries, into the hushed chill of stone cloisters where candlelight flickers against high vaulted walls. The air here is sharp with incense and wax, damp stone, and the faint musk of woolen habits worn day after day. You are no longer in a bustling city. You are in the disciplined silence of a medieval monastery, where sleep is treated not as a luxury, but as a carefully measured obligation to God. You shuffle barefoot across uneven flagstones, your steps echoing louder than you expect in the cloister walk. It is near midnight, and most of your modern instincts beg for rest. Yet here, in this place, rest is not given freely. Bells toll through the darkness, pulling monks from their beds, summoning them to prayer. It is the rhythm of the divine office: vigils, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline, carved into the day and night like grooves on a wheel. Sleep is constantly interrupted, parceled out in fragments that make you wonder how anyone survived without coffee. The mainstream fact here is that medieval monks often slept in 2 or 3 short blocks, never enjoying the unbroken 8 hours that you might crave. Their schedules demanded midnight rising for prayer, then perhaps a return to bed before dawn's work. You can picture them, robes hastily thrown on, shuffling into the chapel with eyes still heavy, voices chanting psalms that slide into a hypnotic drone. And here's a quirky tidbit. Sometimes monks were known to nod off mid-service, their heads dipping, only to be prodded awake by a stern abbot. Imagine being caught snoring in the choir stalls, only to be told your penance is more prayer. You lie down on a narrow wooden plank bed in a dormitory lined with identical rows. Each monk has his spot, his blanket of coarse wool, his pillow of straw. Privacy is non-existent. The air smells faintly sour, a mix of sweat, candle soot, and damp wool. Yet in that simplicity is a kind of equality. No feather beds for the wealthy, no sprawling chambers, just shared hardship. You try to sink into rest, but before long, the bell rings again, rattling your skull. You trudge back to the chapel, muttering, "Really? Again?" under your breath. Historians still argue whether monks embraced this fractured sleep pattern with devotion or endured it reluctantly. Was it spiritual discipline or simply institutionalized exhaustion? Evidence suggests both. Some writings praise the vigilance it inspired. Others quietly note the difficulty of keeping eyes open. For you, standing here centuries later, it feels almost impossible. And yet, their lives revolved around it. Their nights punctuated by prayers rising into the darkness. You return to bed for a second stretch of sleep, though it feels shallow and restless. Your dreams, if they come at all, are colored by chants and candlelight. You might dream of endless lines of Latin text, or of bells chasing you across fields. Monastic life bleeds into the subconscious, just as surely as your modern job can infect your own dreams. You shift, pull the scratchy blanket higher, and breathe through the itch of straw. The monastery outside is utterly silent, apart from the occasional hoot of an owl or the whisper of wind through cloister arches. Yet your mind keeps circling the same thought: how different their understanding of sleep was. For monks, rest was not about refreshment, but about obedience. They willingly sacrificed comfort for devotion, believing wakefulness in the night brought them closer to God. You admire their discipline, even as you secretly wish they had invented decaf sooner. In the dim dormitory, you notice the faint glow of embers from the communal hearth. A few monks roll over. Adjusting robes, one lets out a quiet sigh, heavy with centuries of fatigue. You are not alone in your tiredness. The humanity of it presses close. These were people, after all, not stone saints. They, too, felt the ache of interrupted sleep, the frustration of heavy lids, the relief of finally collapsing after dawn. It's oddly comforting to realize that even the most pious among us battled the same nightly struggles. And yet, even here, humor sneaks in. There are recorded accounts of monks grumbling about brothers who snored too loudly, ruining any chance of rest. The solution? Sometimes banishment to the far end of the dormitory. Other times, stern reminders to pray harder. You grin softly at the thought. Medieval snoring wars. Centuries before earplugs were invented. You turn on your side, the wooden board pressing against your hip, and listen to the steady rhythm of the night office. The chant continues, low and steady, carrying words you half understand but fully feel. Your mind drifts with it, caught between wake and sleep, body and spirit. This is exactly what the monastery intended. A liminal state where weariness softens the ego and devotion takes root. Outside the cloister walls, peasants sleep soundly in their cottages, free from midnight bells. Their rest is longer, if not softer. But inside, the monks persist, carving their nights into fragments. And so you, caught in their rhythm, drift with them, surrendering to a sleep that is never truly yours, but borrowed, interrupted, consecrated. If you are still awake with me here in this stone chamber, well, congratulations. Most modern listeners would have dozed off by now, lulled by chants and candle smoke. Perhaps this is your own vigil, your own moment of midnight wakefulness. And if you'd like to keep wandering with me through the long corridors of history, maybe tap the like button, subscribe, so you'll be called back at the right hours. No bells required. The chant fades, the embers glow low, and the night stretches on. You breathe, slow and steady, drifting again, carried by the rhythm of monks who believed sleep itself was a prayer, interrupted yet unbroken in spirit. You leave the cold stone of the cloister behind and shuffle into the rough-hewn space of a peasant's cottage. The ceiling is low, beams dark with smoke, and the air smells of earth, wood smoke, and animals. You crouch because the thatch above almost brushes your head, and you step carefully to avoid tripping over tools or the occasional chicken darting across the dirt floor. Sleep here is different, simpler, humbler, yet no less vital. You feel the day's weight heavy in your bones, hours of field work, bending, lifting, trudging through mud. When you finally collapse, it is not onto feather beds or polished boards. It is onto straw, lumpy, scratchy, and alive with the faint rustle of mice nesting in the corners. Your pallet is little more than a sack stuffed with reeds or straw, perhaps covered with a coarse woolen blanket if you are fortunate. You lie down, shifting uncomfortably, feeling sharp stems poke at your back. Yet exhaustion is stronger than discomfort, and your eyelids sag almost immediately. This is the mainstream fact. Most medieval peasants slept communally, often with family packed close for warmth, sometimes even with animals inside the cottage. A cow in the corner, a dog curled at your feet, a child tucked beneath your arm. It was warmth, not luxury, that mattered most. You listen to the sounds of the cottage. A baby fusses softly before settling. The crackle of embers is steady. And outside, the wind rattles the thatch like fingers drumming on a drum skin. The darkness is nearly complete, broken only by faint red glow from the hearth. You shift again, scratching at your neck, wondering how anyone managed rest with fleas, lice, and vermin sharing the bed. The quirky tidbit here is that sometimes people hung herbs above their beds or scattered them through the straw, hoping to drive pests away. Imagine lavender or rosemary mixed into the bedding, not so much for aromatherapy as for pest control. Still, it must have helped, and maybe even smelled faintly pleasant for a while. Sleep for peasants was dictated by the seasons. In summer, with long days of work, you might fall asleep quickly, then rise before dawn to return to the fields. In winter, nights stretched on, and so did the hours of rest, though broken by tending the fire or checking on animals. Historians still argue whether peasants naturally fell into segmented sleep like the Romans, or if their exhaustion simply carried them through the night without waking. Either way, the rhythm was set not by clocks, but by survival. Light, dark, hunger, and work. You roll onto your side, pressed against another body, perhaps a sibling or spouse, maybe even a stranger if travelers are lodging for the night. Privacy does not exist. The warmth of shared breath is your blanket. You murmur a short prayer, crossing yourself quickly, because superstition holds strong in this dark world. Sleep is not only rest, it is vulnerability. Who knows what spirits or dreams might creep in while your eyes are shut? And so you slip into dreams colored by the life you lead. You might dream of fields heavy with grain, of rain falling at the right time, of a fat pig ready for slaughter. Or you might dream of famine, of wolves, of the ever-looming specter of illness. Dreams were not entertainment here. They were omens, warnings, perhaps even prophecies. Some families passed them around in the morning, wondering aloud if they meant good harvest or bad luck. You stir awake briefly in the middle of the night. The fire has died low, and the cold creeps in. You hear scurrying at the edges of the cottage. Mice, rats, perhaps even larger creatures sniffing near the door. You reach for a stick, poke the embers, coaxing flame back. Because without heat, the night is long and bitter. The smoke stings your eyes, yet the warmth returns, and you curl back onto the straw, grateful for its scratchy embrace. In this dim half-wakefulness, you think about how peasants measured their lives by labyrinth sleep. Work, eat, rest, repeat. There were no clocks striking hours, no calendars full of meetings, just the endless cycle of sun and season. And somehow, despite the hardship, they endured. You picture a mother humming softly to lull a child back to sleep, her voice blending with the crackle of the fire. You picture a man rolling over after a day in the fields, sighing into dreams he will not remember. Sleep was woven into their survival, nothing more, nothing less. There is humor here too. You imagine one unlucky sleeper waking to find a chicken roosting beside his head, or a pig nudging him for space. In cottages where animals shared warmth, boundaries blurred. A cow's slow breathing becomes part of the lullaby of night. You shift and smile faintly, realizing that dehot, compared to straw poking your ribs, your modern mattress feels like the throne of a king. The air grows colder still, and you pull the blanket higher. Your breath fogs in the air, visible even in the darkness. You turn, bumping shoulders with the person beside you, muttering apologies. Sleep in this setting is social, unavoidable, and practical. You dream together, rest together, wake together. Individual comfort is irrelevant. Only the group's survival matters. As dawn nears, a rooster crows, dragging you from slumber whether you are ready or not. The cottage stirs. A dog shakes itself, straw scatters, and children groan softly. You rub your eyes, stretch your stiff limbs, and feel every ache from yesterday's labor. There is no luxury of sleeping in. Work waits. The fields do not care if you are tired. Yet before you rise fully, take this moment with me. If you are still here, still listening among straw pallets and the whispers of peasants long gone, maybe tap the like button, subscribe so you can follow me deeper into this long, winding history of sleep. Think of it as leaving a little carved mark on the beam of the cottage, a sign that you were here, part of this shared story. The door creaks open, letting in pale gray light. You step outside, blinking against the dawn, the cottage behind you alive with stirring bodies and soft complaints. Sleep was short, rough, communal, but it was enough to carry life forward another day. You yawn, stretch, and step into the chill, already thinking of the next night when straw, smoke, and weary bones will greet you once again. You step out of the peasant smoky cottage, but the world shifts again, as if history itself tugs you forward by the sleeve. Now you find yourself climbing a narrow spiral staircase, stone cold beneath your hand, until you emerge into the chamber of a feudal lord. The contrast is startling. Gone are the low ceilings, the scratchy straw, and the scurrying mice. Here, tapestries hang heavy on the walls, muffling the draft, and a fire roars in a grand hearth, its glow casting long, lazy shadows across carved beams. Your feet sink into rushes scattered on the floor, fragrant with herbs tucked in to mask less pleasant odors. The air smells faintly of lavender and smoke, far gentler than the sour tang of a peasant's hut. At the center stands a bed, an actual bed, tall, commanding, and piled high with layers of linen and fur. You climb onto it cautiously, feeling the give of feather-stuffed mattresses that sag softly beneath your weight. This is no scratchy straw sack. This is comfort reserved for power. The mainstream fact here is that feudal lords and noble families slept on feather beds, often covered in linen sheets imported from distant lands, with heavy fur or wool blankets stacked above. Beds were status symbols, sometimes so elaborate that they were passed down as heirlooms, cherished as much as land or jewelry. The quirky tidbit? Many noble beds had curtains, thick fabric drawn tight around the frame, creating a private cocoon. These curtains were not just for show. They kept out drafts in drafty stone halls and offered privacy in chambers where servants often bustled. You tug the curtain closed, and instantly the room outside fades to muffled silence, leaving only your breath and the warmth of layered blankets. You stretch out and imagine what it felt like to be a medieval lord, sinking into this cocoon. A day of hunting, feasting, or scheming might end with a collapse into feather softness, while servants banked the fire and checked that the shutters were barred. Yet even in luxury, sleep was not without unease. You are keenly aware that wealth made one a target, that danger lurked beyond stone walls. Perhaps this is why some nobles slept with weapons close at hand. Swords leaned within reach, daggers tucked beneath pillows. Safety and rest were never fully aligned. Historians still argue whether noble sleep was truly better or simply different. Feathers might have eased the body, but furs grew heavy, and chamber smoke often stung the lungs. Beds were softer, yes, but fleas and lice did not discriminate by class. Even kings scratched through the night, despite their silken sheets. You chuckle softly at the thought. All the wealth of a realm, and still, the same tiny pests gnawed at rest. You roll onto your side, feeling the weight of the blankets, each layer pressing you deeper into the mattress. The fire crackles. Outside the curtains, servants shuffle softly, preparing for morning even as you drift. A dog lies at the foot of the bed, ears twitching, tail flicking in sleep. The chamber is quiet, but your mind is restless. Dreams arrive anyway, weaving symbols out of anxieties. Perhaps you dream of rebellion in the fields, of rival lords marching, of storms battering your lands. Or perhaps, just as likely, you dream of feasts, of banquets unending, of roasted boar and overflowing goblets. You wake briefly in the night, stirred by the pop of the fire. The curtains trap warmth, but the air inside feels close, heavy. You push them aside for a moment, breathing in cooler drafts from the stone walls. Your eyes adjust to shadows dancing across tapestries, hunting scenes, saints, lions rampant. The images blur into dream shapes, flickering in your tired mind. You draw the curtain closed again, sinking back into the embrace of linen and feather. In this chamber, sleep is not just necessity, it is display. To own such a bed is to show wealth, status, even taste. Guests might be led past it as a subtle boast. You grin faintly, imagining a medieval version of showing off your luxury mattress brand to visitors. Imported linen, goose feathers, four-poster oak, only the best for me. Some things never change. The fire dwindles lower, the crackle subsides, and you find yourself drifting. You imagine nobles whispering secrets before sleep, plots and alliances murmured into pillows. A bed here is not only for rest, but for politics, family, even diplomacy. Who lies beside you, and how comfortably, could shift the fate of entire kingdoms. The very act of lying down carries weight. You turn again, feeling the feather bed yield, and the dog at your feet sighs deeply. Outside, the world is dark, the castle walls thick, the countryside silent. Yet in this chamber, insulated by wealth, sleep feels almost safe, if never quite free of tension. You reflect on the peasants curled in straw just beyond these walls, and the monks rising for midnight prayer. Each class, each group, carving their nights in different ways, yet all bound by the same need to close eyes and surrender. And here, in this curtained bed, you feel that surrender more easily. Warmth gathers. Your body sinks. For a moment, you forget the echoes of stone halls, the threats at the borders, the bite of fleas. You only feel the softness, the pull downward into quiet. Still, before you give in fully, let me whisper a reminder. If you are still here, half wrapped in the furs of a medieval lord, perhaps take a moment to press like, maybe subscribe. Think of it as a token left in the bed curtain folds, a little sign of gratitude before sleep claims you. It is your feather pillow in this long, shared chamber of history. The embers glow faintly now. The chamber sinks into silence. You nestle deeper, lids heavy, dreams stirring again. Outside the curtain, the castle stands watch, stone against the night. Inside, you breathe slow, safe in the cocoon of privilege, though never far from the same human need that unites peasant, monk, and king alike. You stir from the cocoon of feather beds and castle curtains, only to find yourself wandering into a hall lined with shelves and scrolls. The world outside still whispers with medieval winds, but here inside, the air is thick with ink, parchment, and the faint musk of candle smoke. You have walked into the circle of scholars, those men who never seemed to tire of arguing, even when it came to sleep and dreams. You sigh, easing down onto a bench, because you already know this will not be restful. These scholars do not sleep through the night. They talk through it, prodding mysteries with quills, as if the secrets of the unconscious will leap out and bow politely before them. The mainstream fact that grounds you here is this: medieval scholars truly did wrestle with the meaning of dreams. Some saw them as divine messages. Others considered them nothing more than the body's digestion bubbling upward into strange images. You close your eyes, pretending for a moment that you might nap through their debates, but their voices rise like a lullaby of contradictions. On your left, a serious-looking man insists that dreams are the soul's journey outside the body. When you dream, he mutters, your spirit departs, visiting realms unseen. He gestures as if this is perfectly obvious. You almost want to laugh. What a terrifying thought, that each nap turns into an astral field trip. The quirky tidbit: some even warned against sudden waking, believing the soul might not have time to return properly. Imagine someone shaking you awake, only for you to yelp, "Wait, my soul is still out shopping." On your right, another scholar clears his throat, claiming with equal confidence that dreams are divine communication. The saints, he says, send visions to guide us. He cites stories of monks dreaming of Virgin Mary or Christ, visions that led to new chapels, new devotions, sometimes even whole pilgrimages. He beams as though the case is closed. Yet across the table, another scoffs loudly, muttering about digestion, phlegm, and the unruly humors. According to him, dreams are nothing but indigestion wearing a theatrical mask. You grin faintly. A midnight snack, in his logic, might lead to visions of angels simply because the cheese was too strong. Historians still argue whether the average medieval person took these debates seriously, or if the intensity of scholarly circles exaggerated their importance. Did ordinary villagers believe their dreams were omens from God? Or did they roll their eyes, muttering that too much cabbage caused restless nights? The truth likely lies somewhere between. But in these candle-lit halls, the arguments grow so heated, you wonder how any of them manage to sleep at all. You glance around the room. Candles sputter, dripping wax into iron holders. Shadows leap and shrink across walls, lined with leather-bound texts. The floor is strewn with rushes, faintly sweet with herbs. The scholars lean forward, robes wrinkling, eyes gleaming with the energy of men who should be in bed, but are not. You think about how different their nights are from those of peasants and lords, where peasants collapse from exhaustion and lords swaddle in feathers. Scholars torment themselves with questions. You stretch out on the bench, your cloak pulled over your shoulders. It is not comfortable, but it will do. The voices around you begin to blur into a murmur, a steady rhythm like waves. You feel your mind wander, slipping into that half-sleep where everything makes just enough sense to be nonsense. A quill scratches on parchment, a book thuds shut. Someone coughs. Through it all, the debate never ceases. One scholar leans back, eyes narrowing. If dreams are divine, he says, then why are they so often absurd? Why do I dream of pigs in cassocks? You stifle a chuckle. Another responds sternly. Even absurd visions may hide truths. You realize with some delight that they have essentially invented the medieval version of a dream interpretation forum, centuries before the internet. Each one convinced, each one skeptical of the other. None willing to admit ignorance, the night drags on, and you feel your body sink heavier against the bench. Yet their words cling, shaping even your drowsy thoughts. You picture the soul wandering like a ghost through fields. You picture angels slipping secret notes into your unconscious mind. You picture indigestion staging elaborate plays behind your eyelids. Each image feels oddly plausible in the soft haze of candlelight. Still, you wonder how these debates filtered into ordinary lives. Did farmers ever sit at the hearth, retelling dreams of oxen, and wondering if it meant rain? Did wives shake their husbands awake to warn them of ominous visions? Did soldiers mutter about nightmares of defeat before marching to battle? Dreams, after all, belong to everyone, not just scholars. Yet it is scholars who put them into words, scratching endlessly, making the ordinary into grand philosophy. You shift again, adjusting your weight, and feel the wood press hard against your shoulder. A soft snore escapes from the corner. One scholar, finally defeated by exhaustion, slumps forward onto a book. His neighbor nudges him awake, grumbling about discipline, though his own eyes sag. You smile faintly at the irony. These men who chase the meaning of sleep cannot keep hold of it themselves. The candles burn lower, ink stains fingers, pages turn slower, and still the debate continues, though now softer, slower, words slurred with fatigue. You let their murmurs wash over you, soothing in their persistence. There is something oddly reassuring about people arguing about dreams for centuries. It makes your own restless nights feel less lonely, part of a long tradition of humans puzzled by the same strange nightly theater. Your eyes close. You imagine the scholars shrinking to whispers, fading to shadows. Their words fold into your drifting thoughts, indistinguishable from dreams. For a moment, you wonder what your own dream tonight might be. What symbols, what nonsense, what visions stitched from memory, and whether, in some distant hall, someone will argue about its meaning. Before you give in entirely, allow me to whisper softly. If you are still with me, still awake on this long wooden bench, consider tapping like, maybe subscribing. Think of it as a little marginal note, scribbled in the margins of this manuscript of history, your own contribution to the endless commentary. The last candle gutters. The hall grows darker, softer. You breathe slow, your shoulders loosen, and you drift, as scholars always did, into the very mystery they tried so hard to explain. So, the scholars fade away, their ink and arguments dissolving into shadow, and you blink to find yourself not in a cloister, not in a castle, not even in a dusty hall. Now you stand at the edge of a river in Ireland, centuries back, where the air is cool and wet, and mist clings low to the grass. The ground beneath your boots squishes with mud, and the scent of damp oak, tar, and fish fills your nose. This is where your apprenticeship begins. You are no philosopher now, no noble tucked in feathers. You are a medieval boat builder's apprentice, stumbling half awake into a life shaped by timber, river currents, and aching muscles. The workshop sits near the bank, its walls patched with timber and sod, its roof thatched but sagging slightly with the weight of rain. Inside, the air is dense with sawdust, resin, and the faint metallic tang of tools left too long in damp. You step in, blinking at the gloom, the only light coming from cracks in the walls and the orange glow of a small hearth. Your master, grizzled and already grumpy at dawn, points at a stack of rough oak planks. "Plane them smooth," he mutters, his voice flat with the certainty that you will fail at least twice before succeeding. The mainstream fact here is that Irish boat builders of the medieval period crafted vessels like currachs, Lightweight boats with wooden frames covered in animal hides or later, tarred canvas. Larger riverboats and seagoing craft required heavier timbers, carefully shaped and joined without the precision machinery you might expect. Every curve was measured by hand, every seam sealed with tar or animal fat. You touch the timber and feel its stubborn resistance, grain rough beneath your calloused palm. You set to work, dragging a plane along the wood, shavings curling like ribbons, the sound rasping in rhythm with your breathing. Each stroke demands strength and patience. Your back aches almost instantly. A cough echoes from the hearth as your master sharpens a chisel, watching you out of the corner of his eye. You can almost hear his unspoken judgment. Too soft, too slow, too clumsy. Yet this is how you learn, by failing, splinter by splinter. And here is a quirky tidbit. Some apprentices, exhausted by long hours, would slip small carvings or doodles into hidden parts of the frame. Faces, animals, even crude jokes, knowing no one would see them once the boat was sealed. You grin faintly, imagining yourself sketching a lopsided fish inside a beam, a tiny act of rebellion preserved forever beneath tar. You pause, wipe sweat from your forehead, and glance outside. The river slides past, calm now, though you know storms can whip it into violence. Boats mean survival here, fishing, travel, trade. Without them, villages starve or remain isolated. Your task is not simply carpentry, it is lifeblood. Each plank smoothed, each joint fitted, matters far beyond your tired hands. Historians still argue whether medieval Irish boat builders leaned more on imported designs or local traditions. But either way, their craft was skilled, intricate, and vital. The day drags. You measure with cords and rough chalk marks, adjusting angles by eye. You drive pegs into place, hammering until your arm hums with pain. Chips of wood scatter across the dirt floor, mixing with straw and soot. Every sound, the scrape of the plane, the tap of hammer on peg, the muttered curse of your master, creates a rhythm, hypnotic in its monotony. You imagine listening to this for years, until the sounds of tools feel like lullabies. By midday, you slump against a beam, exhausted. Your fingers ache, raw with splinters. Your stomach growls. The meal is simple. Coarse bread, a wedge of cheese, a sip of ale that is more safe than water. You chew slowly, eyes drooping, tempted to drift into sleep right there on the floor. Your master smirks, reminding you that falling asleep near the shavings is a fire risk. You grumble, dragging yourself upright again. The workshop hums with quiet activity. Other apprentices shuffle in, shoulders hunched, each with their own task. One sands a plank until it gleams. Another mixes tar in a cauldron, its thick scent stinging your nose. The master barks instructions, and you stumble forward, arms trembling from effort, yet determined not to falter. This is your life now, measured not in hours of study or pages of ink, but in blisters, in cuts, in aching muscles, soothed only by restless sleep on straw pallets. The light fades as the river turns gold, mist rising once more. You step outside, stretch your back, and stare at the half-shaped hull resting like a giant rib cage. Its curves already suggest movement, though it will be weeks before it touches water. You imagine it gliding downstream, nets trailing, fish thrashing. You imagine it carrying goods to distant markets, voices shouting across the shore, and you imagine it sinking if you measured wrong, if your joints failed, if your hand slipped. The weight of responsibility presses as firmly as the weight of fatigue. Night draws close, and you trudge to the apprentice quarters, a corner of the workshop with little more than straw and a rough blanket. You collapse onto it, back still stiff, muscles buzzing with exhaustion. Sleep here is not noble, not even communal comfort. It is pure necessity, a surrender demanded by bone and sinew. You curl onto your side, drawing the blanket tight, your mind still buzzing with sawdust and the rasp of tools. Dreams blur in, shaped by wood and water, planks bending into impossible shapes, rivers flowing backward, boats sprouting wings and lifting into the sky. You wake once in the night, heart pounding from a dream of drowning. The river, in your sleep, swelled and swallowed your boat, dragging you under. You sit up, shivering, staring at the shadow of the unfinished frame looming against the moonlight. Fear prickles you. Fear of failure, fear of water, fear of the unknown. You sigh, lie back down, and force your eyes closed. Your master would laugh if you admitted it, but sleep carries the same anxieties as waking. If you are still awake here, still trudging with me through sawdust and splinters, perhaps take a moment to like the video, subscribe so you don't miss the next bend in this long river of history. Think of it as pegging a joint tightly in place, securing one small piece of this craft we are building together. The river outside whispers softly. The frame of the boat waits, patient, silent. You close your eyes again, surrendering to dreams shaped by wood, water, and the steady rhythm of a life built plank by plank. The unfinished boat lingers in shadow as dawn breaks, pale light spilling through cracks in the workshop walls. You rub your eyes, still grainy with sleep, and sit up slowly. The smell of damp oak, tar, and ash greets you again, familiar now, like an old cloak heavy on your shoulders. Today is no gentler than yesterday. Your master calls from across the room, voice sharp even at this early hour. He points at a pile of oak planks stacked by the wall and gestures toward the candle flickering near the workbench. Measure them, he orders. No mistakes. You sigh, stretch your stiff back, and shuffle to the work. The task sounds simple, but it is far from it. The oak is thick and stubborn, warped slightly from damp. You must measure each plank with cords and chalk, working by dim candlelight, because the workshop has no broad windows. Your fingers tremble as you pull the cord taut, marking straight lines, adjusting angles, hoping your hands are steady. The flame flickers, shadows leap, and suddenly the chalk mark skews. You curse softly under your breath, wipe the line away, and try again. The mainstream fact here is that medieval boat builders worked almost entirely by hand, relying on muscle memory, cords, and eyeballing angles rather than precise instruments. Geometry was present, yes, but it was practiced through repetition, not neat diagrams. Apprentices like you spent years learning how to judge the curve of a plank by sight alone. A master could glance at timber and know instantly whether it would bend or break. You, however, still squint, still second guess, still scrape and start over. You drag the saw across a plank, each stroke echoing like a groan in the dim room. The smell of resin rises, sticky and sharp. Shavings fall to the floor, littering your boots. The work is slow, repetitive, and relentless, yet somehow hypnotic. Each pull of the saw feels like breath. Inhale, exhale, cut, release. You glance at the candle, its flame dancing as if mocking your clumsy rhythm. The quirky tidbit here is that some apprentices measured progress, not by hours or finished pieces, but by how much candle they burned through in a night. You grin faintly at the thought. Your own productivity chart made of dripping wax. Hours drag. You shift, stretch sore shoulders, and wipe sweat from your brow. The workshop grows stifling, thick with smoke and sawdust. You hear your master muttering as he tests joints, tapping with his mallet, each sound sharp, decisive, final. You long for that kind of certainty. Instead, your own cuts feel rough, your joints loose, your planks warped. You frown, remeasure, and try again. It is slow learning, and it grinds you down as steadily as the sawdust that coats your skin. Historians still argue whether apprentices like you were treated with patience or cruelty. Some masters likely guided with stern instruction, while others barked insults, letting failure teach faster than kindness. Whichever version you live tonight, it is exhausting. You crave approval, but you mostly receive grunts. Still, you persist, because in this world, persistence is the only way forward. By evening, your hands blister, your arms ache, your eyes sting from candle smoke. You slump against a beam, staring at the half-shaped hull looming like a skeletal rib cage. It feels endless, impossible, too much for your weak frame. You laugh softly, bitterly, at the thought of completing an entire boat when you can barely measure a plank straight. And yet, this is the path you are on, the apprenticeship you must survive. You eat your supper, more coarse bread, more cheese, a sip of weak ale. It fills your belly, but not your spirit. You yawn so wide your jaw cracks. Your master notices, smirks, and says, "Don't dream too much. Dreams don't fit planks." You mutter back, "Maybe my dreams are straighter than my cuts." He snorts, not impressed. Later, you return to the task. The candle is shorter now, wax dripping like tears. You plane the wood, stroke after stroke, smoothing edges, coaxing the stubborn oak into shape. The sound of scraping fills the dark room, a steady rhythm, like monks chanting, but in wood and steel. You think of all the nights you will repeat this, until the motion feels like second nature, until your cuts no longer wobble, your lines no longer falter, until you too can glance at timber and know its secrets. Your thoughts wander as you work. You wonder about the river outside, the people who will one day ride this boat, trusting it with their lives. You picture fishermen hauling nets, families crossing currents, traders steering goods downstream. Each life depends on your planks, your joints, your hands. The weight of it presses heavy. You rub your sore fingers and whisper, "Don't sink." The night deepens, your candle guttering low, shadows swallowing the corners of the workshop. You lean close, straining to see, your nose almost pressed to the wood. The flame sputters. Darkness creeps in. You feel the panic of blindness, of losing your lines, your work, your chance to prove yourself. You grab another stub of candle, light it quickly, and breathe relief when the glow returns. You shake your head, muttering at yourself, "All this for a straight plank." Your master finally calls it enough. His voice is calm, not harsh, though still flat with fatigue. "Sleep," he orders. "Tomorrow you'll measure again." You nod, too tired to argue. You stumble to the corner where apprentices curl in straw. You collapse onto your pallet, pulling the rough blanket up, your body aching from head to toe. The sound of your master banking the fire echoes like a lullaby. As your eyes close, your mind fills with images of planks bending, nails hammering, sawdust swirling, You dream you are inside the hull itself, trapped between ribs of oak, trying to escape. You dream of candles burning endlessly, each flame marking failure after failure. You twitch, groan, and turn in your straw, but exhaustion wins, dragging you under. And here, before you drift fully, let me remind you softly, if you are still with me. Bent over warped oak and flickering candles, consider liking this video, subscribing for the long haul. Think of it as securing a joint, fixing one more piece of the frame. Small, simple, but necessary. The workshop grows quiet. The candles gutter out one by one. The river outside whispers faintly in the night, promising work yet to come, mistakes yet to be made, lessons yet to be learned. You breathe slow, heavy, and let the darkness take you, plank by plank, dream by dream. The candles of last night are nothing but hardened puddles of wax this morning. Your hands still ache from endless planing and sawing, yet there is no reprieve. Today is launch day. The boat, once just a skeletal frame of oak, now stands complete. Seams tarred, ribs bound, planks bent and fixed. It looms outside the workshop, resting on supports, waiting for the river to test every joint you hammered, every line you measured, every mistake you hopefully managed to conceal. You tug your cloak tighter, nerves buzzing as villagers gather. The mainstream fact here is that medieval boat launchings were more than practical events. They were communal spectacles. Fishermen, traders, farmers, children, all would gather along the riverbank, partly to help, partly to watch, and partly to judge. A boat that floated well meant prosperity. A boat that sank quickly meant shame for the builder and ruin for the buyer. You stand among them, heart hammering, sweat prickling even in the cool mist of morning. Your master barks orders, his voice cutting through the chatter. Ropes are coiled, stakes hammered free, wedges pulled from under the hull. The air smells of damp earth, tar, and nervous anticipation. Villagers shout, adjusting positions, some tugging ropes, others steadying poles. You grab a rope yourself, palms raw, tugging in rhythm with the others. The boat creaks, wood groaning, as if reluctant to meet its destiny. You mutter a prayer, though you are not sure which saint governs boat launches. Saint Nicholas, perhaps? He is said to watch over sailors. The quirky tidbit. In some coastal villages, people sprinkled ale or wine on the hull before launch, offering a drink to the spirits of the water. You watch someone do exactly that, sloshing a clay jug against the bow. The smell of ale mixes with tar. The ropes tighten. You dig your heels into the mud, pulling, straining, shoulders burning. The boat shifts, just an inch, then another, supports creaking loudly. Someone shouts encouragement. Another yells to watch the angle. You glance at your master, his eyes narrow, scanning every detail, ready to bark if something falters. Your arms scream, but you pull harder. The hull groans again, sliding forward, inch by inch, toward the water. Historians still argue whether such launches were more ceremonial or purely practical, but standing here, it feels like both. Children clap, dogs bark, women shout advice from the bank. The river itself seems to hush, waiting for the test. You grit your teeth, rope biting into your palms, mud squelching underfoot. The boat lurches forward suddenly, jolting you nearly off balance. You stumble, catch yourself, and hear villagers laugh. Someone jokes that you nearly launched yourself before the boat. Finally, with a shuddering slide, The hull hits the river. The splash soaks your boots. Cold water rushing up your legs. The boat rocks, steadies, and floats. For a moment, silence hangs. Then a cheer erupts. Relief floods your chest so strongly it nearly knocks you over. The boat floats. Your cuts, your joints, your nights by candlelight, all holding together in this moment. Your master nods once, not smiling, but not scowling either. For him, this is praise. You wipe your brow, grinning despite yourself. The villagers crowd closer, some touching the hull as though it were a newborn calf, others already arguing over who will first hire it. Fishermen test its steadiness, stepping gingerly inside. The boat rocks, water slapping against its sides. You watch anxiously, waiting for leaks. But for now, it holds. Then chaos begins. Ropes tangle. One villager slips in the mud. Another curses as his boot fills with water. Children shriek with laughter, splashing too close. A dog leaps into the boat, barking madly, nearly capsizing it before being hauled out by the scruff. Your master waves his arms furiously, shouting for order, but no one listens. You laugh softly, shoulders finally unclenching. The hardest part is over. Still, your work is not finished. You are ordered into the boat to steady it while fishermen climb aboard. Your knees shake as you step inside, the planks creaking beneath your weight. The river rocks gently, water lapping, reminding you how fragile your craft really is. You grip a rope, steady yourself, and whisper, "Please don't sink." Fishermen toss nets aboard, their coarse hands far more confident than yours. One claps you on the shoulder, grinning. She floats. That's what matters. You nod, though your stomach still twists. The boat pushes off, drifting a short distance downstream. Villagers run along the bank, cheering. Children wave. Women clap. Dogs bark again. Your master sits sternly at the bow, eyes fixed forward, as though daring the river to test him. You stand in the middle, swaying with each ripple, heart in your throat. Yet the boat holds, sliding gracefully, its tar-sealed seams keeping water at bay. Relief slowly unfurls in your chest. Historians still argue whether these boats were durable or temporary, meant to last years or just seasons. What you know, standing here, is that each launch was a gamble. Timber, tar, sweat, prayers, all bound together into something that might last or might not. You glance at your reflection in the water, wavering with each ripple, and think, maybe this is all life ever is. A boat shoved into the current, tested by every swell. The boat circles back to shore, pulled in by ropes. Villagers crowd, some already haggling over fish they will catch, others laughing about the dog's attempted mutiny. You step out, boots sinking into the mud, and nearly collapse from exhaustion. Your master's voice cuts through the noise. "Not bad," he says gruffly. Your chest swells. Coming from him, it is as good as a blessing. The crowd disperses slowly, though some linger, touching the boat, admiring it, gossiping about its maiden voyage. You slump against a post, arms trembling, body aching in every limb. Yet beneath the ache is pride, steady and warm. You helped create something real, something that floats, something that will carry lives across water. It is more than sawdust and blisters. It is proof. Night falls quietly after the chaos. The workshop is quieter than usual. though laughter still drifts faintly from the tavern. You collapse onto your pallet, straw crackling beneath you, and close your eyes. Yet even in exhaustion, your mind replays the day. The strain of the rope, the cheer of the villagers, the first moment the boat touched water. You dream of rivers stretching wide, of boats multiplying endlessly, of currents carrying you into the unknown. Before sleep takes you fully, one more thought rises. If you are still with me here, soaked in river water and sawdust, maybe leave a like. Subscribe if you want to see where this river leads next. Think of it as your hand on the rope, pulling with me, helping launch the next vessel into the stream. The river hums in your dream. The boat rocks gently, always steady, always moving forward. The cheers of launch day echo faintly in your memory as night creeps in, cold and restless. You are no longer standing safely on the muddy bank. Instead, you are out on the river itself, aboard the very boat your hands helped shape. The air is damp, heavy with salt, for the current has carried you downstream toward the open sea. The timbers beneath your boots groan softly, each creak reminding you that your work is being tested by forces far greater than your master or the villagers. The mainstream fact here is that medieval sailors feared the sea as much as they relied upon it. Storms could appear without warning, and fragile boats were at the mercy of waves, wind, and luck. Even experienced sailors muttered prayers to saints before setting out, knowing how thin the line was between survival and drowning. You feel that line in your stomach now, twisting as the boat rocks more sharply than the calm river ever allowed. The wind rises, canvas snaps above, ropes groan as they tighten, and waves slap against the hull with a steady, menacing rhythm. You grip the gunwale, knuckles white, and taste brine on your lips. The horizon darkens as clouds gather, rolling low and fast. Somewhere to your left, lightning flashes, far enough to admire for now, but closer than you would like. A sailor curses under his breath, spitting into the sea as if daring it to swallow him. Historians still argue whether medieval sailors trusted more in skill or in superstition. Charts were crude, compasses rare, and much of seafaring relied on experience passed from one generation to the next. Yet alongside this knowledge were rituals. Charms tucked in clothing, whispered prayers, even sacrifices of bread or ale tossed into the waves. You see one man near you do exactly that, crumbling bread into the water with a muttered invocation. The quirky tidbit: some believed it calmed sea spirits, bribing them not to overturn the boat. You half wish you had brought an extra loaf yourself. The rain begins, fine at first, then heavier, drumming against the deck and your cloak. You pull it tighter, though the damp soaks through anyway, chilling your skin. Your teeth chatter as you huddle near the mast, watching the crew scramble. They pull ropes, adjust the sail, shout orders that vanish in the roar of wind. You want to help, but every step feels treacherous, the planks slick with water, the boat pitching beneath your feet. You grip tighter, telling yourself, just stay upright, just stay alive. The boat lurches suddenly, a wave slamming against the side. You stagger, nearly topple. Catch yourself with a grunt. Water surges across the deck, icy against your boots. The sailor beside you laughs grimly. "First storm," he shouts. You nod, too shaken to speak. He claps your shoulder, steadying you, then mutters, "Pray harder." Lightning cracks again, closer now, splitting the sky. For an instant, the world is white. Faces strained, ropes taut, sail billowing wildly. Then, darkness crashes back, heavier than before. You hear the mast groan, wood straining. Your heart pounds as though it too might snap. You whisper a prayer you half remember, words blending with the wind. You think of monks chanting at midnight, of peasants curled in straw, of lords wrapped in fur. All of them, no matter their station, slept under roofs. You, however, are trapped in the open, the sea itself your bed, rocking violently, never letting you rest. The thought feels absurd, almost laughable. Who would choose this? And yet, this is life for sailors. Nights broken by storms, days spent clinging to the edge of survival, always hoping to see shore again. The quirky humor creeps in even here. One sailor, soaked to the bone, shouts, "If we drown, at least no one has to pay the carpenter." The others laugh, strained but genuine. You chuckle too, despite the fear, because humor is the only warmth left in the storm. The rain lashes harder. Your cloak clings like a second skin, heavy, dragging you down. You shiver, lips numb, vision blurred by spray. The sea surges, lifting the boat high, then dropping it with a crash that rattles your teeth. You cling to the side, praying the timbers hold. Every creak feels like a warning, every groan like a threat. Your stomach lurches with each drop, and you swallow hard, refusing to be sick in front of hardened sailors. Somewhere in the chaos, you drift into a strange trance. The roar of wind and wave becomes rhythmic, almost like monks' chants again, deep and steady. Your body, though tense, begins to sway with the motion instead of fighting it. You find yourself muttering, "In, out, rise, fall," as though the storm itself were a lullaby. Exhaustion creeps in, heavier than fear. Your eyes close for a moment, only to snap open again as a wave slams across the deck, drenching you. Still, you notice something. The boat does not break. It groans, it shudders, but it holds. Your planks, your joints, your sleepless nights with chalk and candlelight, they are here now, keeping you afloat. Pride flickers through the fear, a warmth in the cold. You helped build this, and it survives. For now. Hours pass, though it feels like days. The storm does not vanish but lessens, its rage ebbing like a tantrum spent. The rain softens, the wind loosens its grip. The waves still roll, but less violently. Sailors slump, breath ragged, hands raw from rope. You sink against the mast, trembling with relief. The clouds part slightly, showing a strip of pale dawn. You laugh softly, though it sounds more like a sob. Historians still argue whether storms like this forged stronger communities among sailors, or if they merely deepened superstitions. What you know is that you will never forget the taste of salt on your lips, the ache in your hands, the terror and the pride that mingled in your chest. You close your eyes, listening to the sea calm, and finally, you let yourself drift into uneasy rest. If you are still awake with me, rocking on these soaked planks, maybe consider liking this video, subscribing to keep sailing with me into the rest of history. Think of it as tossing a small loaf into the sea, a gesture of goodwill, a charm to keep the storms away for another night. The river that became a sea fades slowly, the waves quieting, the boat steadying. You breathe deep, chest heavy, body spent. The storm has passed, but its memory lingers in your bones, in your dreams, in every plank you touched. The storm fades into memory, though your bones still ache with its rhythm. When you open your eyes again, you are no longer clinging to sodden ropes on the open sea. Instead, you find yourself stumbling through a crowded market square, the hum of voices buzzing like bees in summer air. It is morning, though your body insists it is still midnight. You rub your eyes, heavy with exhaustion, and feel the strange pull of what modern people would call sleep debt. In truth, you are centuries too early for that phrase, but the sensation is unmistakable. Too many nights cut short, too many hours stolen by labor, storms, or duties, leaving you sluggish even as the world demands your presence. The mainstream fact here is that medieval people were not strangers to fatigue. Letters, chronicles, and even sermons record complaints about sleepless nights, about weary mornings after too much drink or too much prayer, about bodies that refused to obey when dawn arrived. Sleep debt was not invented with modern jobs. It has always haunted humans, gnawing quietly at those forced to rise too soon. You drag your feet across uneven stones, half listening to the trader's cries. The air is thick with smells, both inviting and revolting. Fresh bread still steaming, sharp onions piled high, dried fish pungent enough to sting your nose, ale sloshing from mugs. You pass a butcher's stall, where salted meat dangles on hooks, flies buzzing lazily. You try not to breathe too deeply, though your stomach rumbles. A child tugs at your sleeve, begging for a coin in exchange for a withered apple. You shake your head, pockets empty, and keep walking, your eyelids fluttering as though they might close mid-step. You find yourself drawn toward a tavern, where the door hangs open, voices spilling out along with the yeasty scent of ale. Inside, the light is dim, smoke from the hearth mingling with the stale sweetness of spilled drink. You squeeze onto a bench, your body folding gratefully, as if even rough wood is softer than it should be. The man beside you, ruddy-cheeked and already drunk though the day is young, slaps your shoulder and shouts for more ale. You shake your head, too tired to join his revelry, though the mug pushed into your hand feels oddly comforting. Historians still argue whether medieval people drank ale more for hydration than for merriment, but what cannot be denied is that it dulled hunger and soothed weariness. You sip, the bitter liquid heavy on your tongue, and feel a warmth spread through your chest. It does not erase exhaustion, but it softens it, like a blanket thrown over frayed nerves. Around you, laughter rises, mugs clash, and yet more than one head droops. Even here, in the midst of merriment, sleep finds its cracks. The quirky tidbit is that taverns sometimes doubled as lodging houses, their benches and floors rented for pennies to those too tired, or too drunk, to stumble home. You glance around and notice one man already slumped against the wall, mouth open, snoring faintly while his companions still drink. Another curls in the corner, using his cloak as a pillow. You smile faintly. You could join them easily. Your body aches for it. But you are swept back outside by the press of the market, pulled again into the noise and clamor. The square is alive with barter and gossip. Women haggle over cloth. Men argue about the weight of grain. Children dart between stalls, their laughter shrill. You shuffle through, head heavy, every shout ringing louder than it should. Sleep deprivation sharpens noise into pain. You squint, rubbing temples, wishing desperately for quiet. But quiet is rare here. The town is alive from dawn until long after dusk, and there is little room for your weary sighs. A bell tolls in the distance, marking the hour. You pause, leaning against a post, and realize how slowly the day seems to crawl when you are tired. Minutes stretch endlessly, yet the tasks before you do not shrink. You half laugh at the thought. Perhaps medieval fatigue is no different from modern fatigue. The details change, but the heaviness in the limbs, the sharpness of light, the stubborn refusal of the brain to cooperate. These are timeless. You make your way toward the riverbank, where boats load and unload goods. Sailors shout, ropes creak, barrels thud onto planks. The bustle reminds you of your own recent labor, though now you are merely an observer. Your master stands nearby, arms crossed, eyes sharp. He nods when he sees you, then scowls at your sluggish steps. "Too much ale?" he asks. You shake your head, too tired to explain that no, it was not ale. It was storms, markets, and endless labor. He grunts anyway, unconvinced. You sink onto a barrel, watching workers scurry, your head drooping. Sleep teases, flickering at the edges of your vision. You jerk awake each time, startled, embarrassed, but unable to resist the pull. One sailor chuckles, nudging his companion. "Apprentice dreams with eyes open," he says. You laugh weakly, acknowledging the truth. The afternoon drags, each hour heavier than the last. You help carry goods, though your muscles protest, your grip slipping often. At one point, you nearly stumble into the water, saved only by a quick grab from another worker. Your master sighs, muttering about wasted strength. You nod, ashamed but powerless. Fatigue has claimed you fully now, and no amount of bread or ale can restore what the night and storm have stolen. Historians still argue whether medieval people accepted exhaustion as part of life or complained as much as we do today. Some records suggest resignation, others brim with grumbles. What is certain is that weariness has always been a constant companion. The body craves sleep, and when it is denied, every task becomes monumental. You feel this truth in your bones now, each barrel heavier, each step longer, each word sharper. Evening comes. The market quiets, stalls closing, voices softening. The tavern fills again, laughter spilling out into the square. You, however, drift toward your straw pallet, every limb screaming for rest. You collapse, cloak still wrapped around you, and sleep claims you almost instantly. Yet even in dreams you are tired. You wander markets that never end, carry barrels that grow heavier, chase voices that echo endlessly. You wake once in the night, groaning, rolling onto your side, only to fall back into the same weary dreamscape. If you are still with me, staggering through this crowded market on too little rest, maybe tap the like button. Subscribe if you wish to follow me further down this weary road. Think of it as a shared mug of ale, a small comfort among long days. The night deepens, the square empties, and your snores mingle with those of countless others. Sleep may be shallow, broken, unsatisfying, but it is all you have, and all you need to survive another day. The market fades, the tavern noise dwindles, and when you open your eyes again, you are somewhere quieter, though no less strange. The air is heavy with the smell of herbs, dried lavender, fennel, chamomile, and stranger things you cannot name. Bundles hang from rafters, shadows swaying faintly in the candlelight. You are in a healer's cottage, or perhaps an apothecary's den, where sleep is not simply endured, but treated, courted, coaxed with charms and remedies. You sit on a wooden stool, rough beneath you, as a woman with lined hands presses a steaming cup into your fingers. The mainstream fact is that medieval Europe teemed with remedies for sleeplessness. Physicians prescribed herbs like poppy, lettuce, and valerian, each believed to quiet the restless mind. Recipes survive in manuscripts, mixtures of honey, milk, and ground seeds, meant to lull the body into slumber. You lift the cup and sip. The taste bitter, earthy, and strangely soothing. It coats your tongue, warming your throat. You sigh, shoulders loosening, though you are not sure if it is the herbs working or the simple relief of being told that rest might finally come. The quirky tidbit here is that not all remedies were so gentle. Some advised rubbing hare's brain mixed with oil onto your temples or placing a cooked dormouse beneath your pillow. You grimace at the thought, grateful that tonight your host favors herbs over rodents. Still, you cannot help but imagine the smell of roasted dormouse tucked under straw bedding, and you laugh softly to yourself. Sleep cures, it seems, could be as bizarre as the dreams they sought to summon. You glance around the cottage. Shelves sag under jars filled with powders, liquids, and dried roots. A mortar and pestle rests on the table, stained from years of grinding. A cat dozes near the hearth, tail flicking in dreams, while the healer hums softly as she arranges more herbs. Outside, the village is quiet, dogs barking faintly in the distance, the wind rattling shutters. Here, though, the space feels hushed, designed for calm. Historians still argue whether these remedies actually worked, or if their power lay mostly in belief. Was it the valerian root truly calming the nervous system, or the comfort of ritual, of being told that sleep could be summoned? Perhaps both. Either way, people clung to remedies, desperate for peace in restless nights. You sip again, the warmth spreading deeper, your body sinking against the stool. The healer murmurs advice. Do not eat onions before bed. They heat the blood. Avoid strong drink if you want gentle dreams. Burn rosemary near the bed to drive away spirits. You nod, half amused, half convinced. After all, when sleep eludes you, even the strangest rituals feel worth trying. You picture yourself sprinkling rosemary on coals, whispering prayers, and settling onto straw with hope rather than dread. You think, too, of lullabies. Mothers hummed them to children. Soft tunes passed down through generations. Simple melodies, repetitive and soothing, often laced with warnings disguised as comfort. Sleep, child, or the bogeyman comes. Gentle, yes, but edged with threat. You smile faintly at the paradox, coaxing sleep with both love and war. Even now, lullabies survive, though stripped of their darker teeth. Sleep has always needed song to soften its arrival. A candle guttering nearby draws your gaze. The flame dances, shadows stretch, and your eyelids flutter heavier. You let your head rest back, listening to the healer grind something in her mortar. The sound is steady, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. It reminds you of monks chanting, of waves pounding, of saws rasping through oak. Every age, it seems, has its rhythms that blur wake and sleep. You wake briefly, startled by the sound of the cat leaping onto the table. The healer chuckles, scratching its ears, muttering that cats are guardians of dreams. Another quirky belief. Some thought cats could steal breath, others that they kept nightmares at bay. You look at the animal, its eyes half closed, and decide you prefer the gentler version. You stroke its fur, soft and warm, and your hand relaxes even as your mind drifts again. Dreams arrive quickly now. You imagine fields of poppies swaying in the wind, their red petals nodding like drowsy heads. You wander among them, each step softer, each breath slower. The poppies lean closer, whispering in voices you cannot understand. You let them guide you, trusting that they carry no threat, only sleep. The dream feels like a remedy in itself, spun from herbs and song, from ritual and hope. Still, sleep is never free of unease. Somewhere in the dream, a voice warns that too much poppy brings not rest, but endless sleep. You startle, remembering that many remedies straddled the line between healing and danger. Doses mattered. Too little, no effect. Too much, oblivion. You shiver slightly, even within the dream, then remind yourself that the healer knows her craft. You are safe here, lulled, but not lost. The night deepens. The candle shrinks. The cat stretches, yawns, and curls tighter. You breathe slow, the bitter taste of herbs lingering faintly on your tongue. You think of all the strange remedies humanity has tried. Dormice, hare's brains, poppies, rosemary, prayers, lullabies. Some laughable, some enduring, some secretly effective. All united by the same desperate need: to close eyes, to surrender, to rest. Historians still argue whether sleep was treated more as a physical ailment or a spiritual one in these centuries. The truth, you sense, is that it was always both. The body needed calming, the spirit needed guarding, and so remedies addressed both. A cup of herbs soothed the stomach, a prayer soothed the soul. Between them, perhaps, sleep arrived. You shift on the stool, half asleep now, your cloak slipping from your shoulders. The healer touches your arm gently, murmurs that you should lie down. You obey, curling on a low cot by the hearth. The straw beneath is softer than usual, the blanket faintly scented with lavender. You close your eyes, breathing deep, letting the warmth and fragrance wash over you. Before you drift entirely, let me whisper once more. If you are still awake, cradling this bittersweet cup with me, maybe leave a like, subscribe, so you can follow into the stranger remedies still to come. Think of it as your own charm, tucked under the pillow, a promise of dreams yet to unfold. The fire crackles softly. The healer hums again. The cat purrs. Your breath steadies. Your body loosens. And the night folds around you like a gentle charm, herbs and lullabies weaving sleep into your weary bones. The scent of rosemary and lavender fades. The healer's cottage melts into shadow. And when you blink awake, you are surrounded by books, scrolls, and the restless chatter of scholars, dressed not in rough robes, but finer gowns of Renaissance fashion. The air is warmer here, filled with ink and parchment dust, and the conversation is sharper, more confident, as if sleep itself is no longer just mystery, but science. You slide into a chair at a long table, while men with serious faces argue in Latin, quills scratching furiously, diagrams scattered in front of them. The mainstream fact is this. In the Renaissance, theories of sleep were tied closely to the ancient concept of humors. Physicians believed the body contained 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile, and that sleep arrived when these humors shifted and cooled. One popular notion claimed that sleep was caused by vapors rising from food in the stomach, moving into the brain and slowing thought. You roll your eyes softly, thinking of Aristotle's old vapor theory dressed up in new clothing. Yet these men debate it as though it were cutting edge. At the head of the table, a physician explains with great seriousness that sleep restores balance, purging excess heat. He draws a diagram of a reclining man with arrows pointing from stomach to skull, proudly declaring that digestion and slumber are twin processes. You sip watered wine and try not to laugh. The quirky tidbit? Some Renaissance doctors prescribed slices of roasted lettuce before bed, believing its cooling effect would lull patients into slumber. Imagine tucking into a midnight salad, not for health, but for dreams. Historians still argue whether the Renaissance brought genuine progress in understanding sleep or simply rewrapped older Greek and medieval theories with fancier diagrams. Certainly, observation grew sharper, but many ideas remained tangled in superstition. Astrology, for instance, crept into the discussion. One scholar insists that the position of the planets at birth dictates how easily one falls asleep. He swears Mars-born men toss restlessly, while those ruled by Venus drift easily into slumber. You glance upward through an open window, noting the stars, and wonder whether even they yawn in boredom at the argument. You lean back, feeling the hard wood of the chair press against your spine. The room glows with candlelight, its smoke rising in lazy spirals. A lute plays faintly in a neighboring chamber, the melody soft, weaving through the academic chatter. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the music wash over you. But one scholar notices and frowns. "Sleep," he declares loudly, "must not be confused with idleness. It is a noble function, but excess is dangerous." You smile faintly at the eternal truth. Even in the Renaissance, people were lectured for sleeping too much. On the table before you lies a manuscript titled De Somno et Vigilia, on sleep and waking. You flip through pages filled with cramped Latin, noting diagrams of eyes, brains, stomachs, arrows looping endlessly. The language is dense, but the intent is clear. Sleep must be explained, categorized, pinned down like a butterfly in glass. You chuckle softly, wondering if the scholars themselves sleep better for having written so much about it. Your head drifts forward, chin brushing the parchment. You dream briefly of floating in a pool of ink, quills circling you like fish. You wake with a start when one scholar coughs loudly. He eyes you sternly but says nothing. Clearly, even here, falling asleep in a sleep lecture is considered impolite. The discussion shifts. Someone suggests that sleep is the soul retreating inward, reflecting on celestial truths. Another scoffs, claiming it is only a physical need, no different from hunger. Their voices rise, animated, hands slicing the air. You rub your temples, smiling faintly. The arguments have changed words, but not tone since Greece and the monastery. Humanity, it seems, loves debating dreams more than simply enjoying them. The quirky humor of the moment arrives when one physician demonstrates a supposed cure for nightmares. He places a polished stone beneath his tongue and declares it ensures peaceful dreams. His colleague counters that tying a rooster feather around the neck is far more effective. You suppress a laugh, picturing yourself going to bed with poultry accessories just to sleep better. Outside, bells toll softly, marking the hour. The scholars pay no mind. They keep arguing, voices blurring into a drone, oddly soothing, like bees humming in a hive. You lean back again, close your eyes, and allow their chatter to become background noise. The humors, the planets, the feathers, they swirl together into nonsense, yet somehow it comforts you. Historians still argue whether Renaissance science truly advanced human understanding of sleep. But sitting here, you suspect the real achievement was simply recording so many debates. Each theory, however wrong, carved a stepping stone toward modern knowledge. Sleep, elusive as ever, remained a puzzle. But at least it was a puzzle, being written down in more detail than before. You feel your body loosen. The music from the lute continues, steady and soft. The candle burns lower, wax pooling at its base. The scholars argue on, oblivious to your half-closed eyes. You let yourself drift, imagining roasted lettuce, planetary alignments, feathers, and polished stones, all conspiring to tuck you into bed. And before you sink fully, one last thought. If you are still with me in this Renaissance hall, maybe tap like, subscribe, so you don't miss the next age of restless nights. Think of it as your own lettuce leaf, a small ritual to ease you gently into what comes next. The lute strums, the scholars drone. You exhale, eyes closing. The Renaissance wraps you in parchment and ink, letting sleep win the argument for once. The lute's faint notes dissolve, the parchment blurs, and when you open your eyes again, the world is louder, sharper, harder. Gone are the quiet debates of Renaissance scholars. In their place clangs the shrill call of bells, the hammer of machinery, the groan of smokestacks rising above crowded streets. You are standing in the industrial age now, where sleep is no longer guided by candles, monks, or even feather beds. It is dictated by clocks. The first thing you notice is the sheer relentlessness of sound. Gears grinding, whistles shrieking, boots striking cobblestones. You blink against the soot hanging in the air, already tasting iron on your tongue. The mainstream fact here is that the Industrial Revolution reshaped sleep more radically than almost any prior era. Before, rhythms of day and night were tied to seasons, to the rising sun and the length of winter darkness. Now, factories demanded punctuality, trains kept to timetables, and shift work cut the night into unnatural fragments. You glance at a tall clock tower, its hands fixed like the stern gaze of a foreman. Time is no longer fluid. It is a ruler snapping across your knuckles. You trudge forward through narrow streets, your boots splashing in puddles of ash-colored water. Workers crowd around you, faces gray with soot, eyes heavy, shoulders bent. They march together toward factories, where chimneys belch smoke against a sky already dulled with haze. Some mutter, others remain silent, conserving energy for the 12-hour shifts ahead. You catch the faint smell of coal, oil, and sweat mixing in the damp air. Your own limbs feel heavy, as though the fatigue of centuries has followed you here. Inside the factory, the noise is deafening. Wheels spin, pistons pound, hammers ring against metal. You flinch instinctively, ears aching, chest tightening. You see boys not yet grown, hauling coal, their faces streaked black. You see women with red-rimmed eyes, stitching in dim lamplight, fingers raw from endless repetition. Men slump briefly against walls during breaks, only to be shouted back into motion. Sleep here is no longer sacred ritual, nor even fragile luxury. It is a stolen commodity. Historians still argue whether the rigid schedules of the industrial age permanently altered human biology or merely forced bodies to bend unnaturally to the clock. Some suggest segmented sleep of earlier centuries faded because factory bells demanded full, unbroken nights to prepare for long days. Others argue that people still woke briefly, then forced themselves back down. Whatever the truth, the clock tower loomed, demanding obedience. You look up at it now, its face glaring like a tireless overseer. You step outside briefly, air cool but still heavy with smoke. A tavern stands nearby, its door cracked open. Inside, men slump over mugs, not with merriment, but with exhaustion. You join them, sliding onto a bench worn smooth. The ale is flat, but you drink anyway, letting its warmth dull the ache in your limbs. Around you, Voices grumble about foremen, about hours, about the impossibility of rest. One man yawns so wide his jaw pops, then laughs bitterly. "Sleep when I'm dead," he mutters. You sigh, recognizing that joke across time. It has never been funny, but it has always been true. The quirky tidbit here is that some employers in the industrial age set up sleeping sheds or allowed workers to nap briefly in corners, not out of kindness, but to prevent accidents. A few forward-thinking mill owners even encourage short naps, claiming it improved productivity. Imagine rows of workers stretched out under machines, snoring in unison, before being roused to clatter back into rhythm. It is strange, absurd, and oddly touching, this acknowledgement that even the strictest clock could not erase the need to close one's eyes. You leave the tavern and walk through streets lit by gas lamps, their glow sharp but cold. Shadows stretch long, distorted by smoke. Houses huddle close, narrow windows showing glimpses of families already collapsed into bed. Entire households sleep side by side in single rooms. Fathers, mothers, children piled into narrow frames. Privacy is a luxury only the rich can afford. You pass a grand house, curtains drawn, silhouettes reclining in comfort. Even here, class shapes rest. The wealthy enjoy upholstered mattresses and silent chambers, while the poor snore amid coughs and creaks of crowded tenements. The night stretches long. You find yourself in a boarding house where workers rent narrow beds in shifts. One rises groggy to head to the factory, and another collapses immediately into the warm indent left behind. This practice, hot bedding, was common in cramped cities. You settle into one of these beds, the straw worn thin, the blanket smelling faintly of another man's sweat. It is not comfort. It is survival. You close your eyes, but the factory whistle in your dreams never stops. You wake with a start at dawn, the whistle real this time. Your body aches, not from rowing boats or hauling ropes, but from the steady grind of machinery. You step into the street again, joining the gray tide of workers. Faces look the same, tired, drawn, resigned. Sleep debt now belongs not only to sailors in storms or monks in vigils, but to entire cities. You sigh, tug your coat tighter, and shuffle along, wondering if rest will ever be free again. Historians still argue whether the industrial age destroyed natural sleep patterns permanently or whether humans adapted in new ways. Some evidence suggests earlier segmented sleep patterns disappeared almost entirely under the tyranny of clocks. Others insist they lingered, hidden behind curtains, before being drowned out by whistles and bells. You look up at the factory looming ahead and feel the weight of that argument in your bones. Perhaps it does not matter. What matters is how tired you are, how tired everyone is, and how little the world cares. You duck into an alley to escape the crowd, leaning against a damp wall. Your head lolls, eyes closing for a moment. The city hums relentlessly around you, wagons clattering, voices shouting, machines pounding. But your body rebels. You nod off, only to jolt awake again, embarrassed, heart racing. You mutter to yourself, 5 minutes, just 5. That desperate negotiation with sleep is timeless. The evening returns, smoke glowing orange in the lamplight. You walk back to your boarding house, legs heavy, stomach hollow. Inside, the room is loud with snores, coughs, and restless turning. You collapse into the narrow bed again, cloak pulled tight, and let fatigue drag you down. Your dreams are filled with gears spinning endlessly, with clocks that chase you, with bells that toll without end. You wake several times, sweating, throat dry, only to fall back into the same grinding cycle. And here, gently, before you drift with me into the next age, let me invite you once more. If you are still awake, if you have trudged with me through soot and smoke, perhaps press like, subscribe. Think of it as a small lantern lit against the smog, a signal that you are still walking these weary streets with me. The factory whistle fades. The clock tower looms. You curl in your borrowed bed, and the city exhales around you, restless, relentless, and never quite asleep. The soot of factories drifts away as you open your eyes again, and now you are in a modern bedroom. The air warmer, quieter, scented faintly of detergent and electricity. The first thing you notice is the mattress beneath you. Soft, springy. Nothing like straw pallets, wooden boards, or feather beds. It yields gently beneath your weight. Coils hidden deep inside, foam cushioning each movement. This, you realize, is the pinnacle of centuries of trial and error, the result of endless tinkering with sleep itself. Yet despite the comfort, your eyelids still sag heavy, because humanity has never truly solved the riddle of rest. The mainstream fact is clear. Modern mattresses, born from industrial innovation, transformed sleep in the 19th and 20th centuries. Steel coils, latex, memory foam, adjustable bases, all designed to promise better rest, longer nights, fewer aches. Yet studies show people still toss and turn, waking groggy, grumbling, as if medieval fleas had followed them into the age of indoor plumbing. You sink deeper, wondering if progress only changed the materials, not the experience. You glance around. Lamps hum softly, their light steady, not flickering like tallow or oil. A fan spins lazily, its drone masking distant traffic. Curtains drawn, walls insulated, windows closed. Yet even here, the mind resists. You think of peasants collapsing after toil, of monks chanting awake, of lords cocooned in curtains, of sailors clutching ropes in storms. You lie cushioned in foam and springs, yet still fight rest. Still ask questions no different than theirs. Why do we dream? Why must we surrender? Why does the body demand what the mind resents? Historians still argue whether humanity has grown worse at sleeping or simply more aware of its struggles. Did peasants snore peacefully, unbothered by self-help books? Or did they wake as often as we do, only without words to frame the complaint? You close your eyes, hearing echoes of all those before you. They too wondered why their minds wandered into absurd visions. They too woke sore, stretched, sighed, and carried on. The quirky tidbit? In the 20th century, some marketers sold mattresses stuffed with horsehair, claiming it absorbed toxic night vapors. Others promoted waterbeds, promising wave-like rest. Even stranger, inventors tested electric blankets that hummed with weak currents, suggesting they could align your energy fields. You laugh softly, picturing a medieval scholar nodding in approval. Vapor theories reborn in springs and wires. The fan continues its low hum. You roll to your side, pulling blankets higher. The mattress curves with you, softer than any plank, warmer than any fur. Yet you know this is not perfection. You recall lying awake with phone screens glaring, alarms set too early, schedules biting into dreams. The industrial clock still rules, now disguised in glowing digits. You realize that modern comfort has not freed humanity from sleeplessness, only shifted the excuses. You breathe slower, thinking of continuity. From caves with fires to beds of linen. From temples of dreams to labs measuring brain waves. The story of sleep is one of persistence. Always mysterious, always necessary, always slightly disappointing. You smile faintly. Perhaps the boredom of it is the point. Sleep resists grandeur, humbling kings and laborers alike. If you are still awake, half listening beneath your own blanket, maybe press like, maybe subscribe, so you can drift with me into more forgotten histories. Think of it as tucking a small charm beneath your pillow, a ritual both modern and ancient. The lamp clicks off. Darkness wraps the room. The mattress holds you gently. The fan hums, and your breath steadies. The centuries collapse together. Peasants in straw, monks at vigils, lords in feathers, sailors in storms, workers in boarding houses, all dissolving into the same silence. You too surrender, pulled into the old rhythm, unchanged, unsolved, eternal. Your breath softens, stretching into longer, slower rhythms. Each exhale like a wave retreating against sand. The room fades into something quieter still, where shadows lengthen, but no menace hides, where silence feels like a blanket spread wide across the world. You feel your body sink deeper, every joint looser, every muscle heavier, until even your thoughts seem too drowsy to rise. There is no need to hold on to the questions of the day, no need to chase after tomorrow's answers. The hum of the fan, the weight of the blanket, the quiet of the room, they all blur together, folding you into a steady calm. You remember the fields of straw, the cloisters of monks, the courts of lords, the storms of sailors, but they drift away now, as faint as smoke. What remains is the steady presence of rest itself, unchanged across centuries, waiting patiently for you as it always has. Let your eyes close without effort. Let your breath guide you down. The story is ending not with noise, but with hush, not with questions, but with quiet assurance. Sleep does not demand anything from you tonight. It only offers stillness, a place where all the heavy weight you carry can be put down. And so you fade, gently, into dreams that will hold you as softly as the dark holds the stars.